Folks, I'm David Powers. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Kind of a reminder, if you've not joined us before, our goal in this program is to provide students an opportunity to meet one of our Mavs Edge partners and discuss a topic that is relevant to their internship search. I've been really excited about this presentation because we're going to literally talk about searching, researching, applying, following up. We're going to cover a lot of ground today, and I'm excited to join Lizzie Arrington this afternoon, or welcome Lizzie Arrington this afternoon to talk about the topic. Thank you for joining me, Lizzie.
Thank you. Yes, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting us. We are thrilled to be able to just partner together on this presentation, but also just on campus, meeting students and getting to know each other.
Thank you. We'd like to get started. Speaking of getting to know each other, with introductions, with elevator pitches. It's sort of kind of our routine for getting things kicked off. I think it's great for students to hear what those pitches sound like, hear those introductions. If we have any students join us live, we'll welcome them to open the mic and maybe even turn on the camera and introduce themselves as well. I'll get us started with my formal introduction. I am David Powers. I'm the Assistant Director of Internships here in the UTA Career Development Center. What that means is I assist employer partners with developing internship programs and direct our Mavs Edge internship program. Lizzie.
Awesome. Yes, so my name is Lizzie Arrington. Again, I am leading our campus recruiting at Utility Concierge. I have been in recruiting and workforce development the past several years and get to work with students every day and helping them launch their careers with internships and entry-level roles. So happy to be here.
Thank you. I don't see that we have any students with us at the moment. If they come in a little later when we get to the question answer, we'll give them that opportunity. But while we're on that topic, I know we've just really passed career fair season. I think you all joined us for the in-person career fair this past time,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, I was there and it was awesome. So I'll be excited to join again in the fall.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for being there. I know we had some hiccups with the weather that day, if I remember correctly. I think they closed. I think campus closed on us. I think in mid fair. We appreciate you being there. But I guess what I was going to ask is, just having passed that fair period, and I think you may still have some online fairs going on. I was curious, when you meet a student at a fair. I know students are really concerned about how to put the best foot forward. How to make conversation. How much is too much to say at an introduction to a fair? Kind of using that as an example, when you meet a student at a fair, what is it that you'd like to hear from them or learn from them? No.
Yeah, I would say my first and foremost, I love to hear, what you're studying in school, when your anticipated graduation date is. And I also love to hear from a student, you know, one question, like tell me about what internships you have in marketing, something really specific that tells me, oh, this is what they're interested in and they've done some research. They know we have internships in this specific field.
Thank you. And I've heard that. I'm glad that I asked because I've heard that response over and over again, the importance of doing your research, understanding something about the company, having an informed question to ask. We've heard from many of our guests that's important, and that's often a skip step. Students don't maybe think to do that research, or if it's a fair, there's going to be so many employers to try to make contact with it. Maybe they don't have something in a lot of those conversations. So that's a great point. And obviously we wanted to give the students an opportunity before we get into the topic to meet you and to talk a little bit more about your background, because I think it's great to learn from folks who are already in an industry, what their career path looked like, and then I know we want you to obviously talk some more about opportunities at Utility Concierge. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, and I'll hop right into this introduction. I like to say this is my more informal introduction. What I did at the very beginning of this presentation would be something I would use if, let's say, I was meeting an employer for the first time at a career fair. But this introduction is more about who I am inside and outside of work, which you might do maybe on your first day of your internship when you're getting to know your new team and building connections and rapport with each other. So, this is me. This is a few pictures of my current life out of the office. I just graduated recently this past year with my master's in business from Pepperdine University. I got to go out to Malibu for graduation, which was
Oh,
not too shabby.
that's
Um,
nice.
Definitely beautiful. And
Yes.
then I'm actually getting married in the next 2.5 weeks. So, really
Oh,
exciting, definitely a busy time for me. And then, as we all know, during the pandemic, we could not be together with friends and family for everything. So I have a picture of my family getting together, and we are just celebrating all the holidays at once because we missed out on so many together. And then also, when I am not working or when I wasn't studying or planning a wedding, I do like to travel as well. So, definitely
wow.
like to keep myself busy and love, love, love to do campus recruiting. I meet students from all schools, all walks of life, and it is an absolute pleasure to be able to partner alongside them and help build their, foundation for a successful career.
I'm even more grateful to you for being with me today. You're a busy woman. You've got a lot. That's a lot going on. So you recently graduated with your graduate program, correct? And that was when exactly?
This past August.
All past August, and a wedding coming up to plan or planned. I mean, it's 2 weeks away. It's pretty well planned at this point, right? I guess that's how it works.
Yes, we're just
It's not spur of the moment,
everything is finished.
right?
Yeah, it is what it is at this point.
Right. Where were you in the lower? I know you mentioned travel. Where is that in the lower right, if you don't mind?
That is in Colorado. So
Okay.
beautiful. I love to be outside, so Colorado is definitely a favorite of mine.
That's awesome, and that's something I've learned since moving to Texas. So many Texans that I've met vacation in Colorado. Colorado is a hot spot in Texas to vacation. I've not been there. I've been to Montana, Wyoming, and kind of that's been my mountains experience being out there. But I hear Colorado is just awesome. Is beautiful. So
It
um,
is.
let's see. I know we want to talk a bit about the company first before we also get into the topic. Please continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said, I work with Utility Concierge right now. I am launching our student programs and a little bit more about what we do as a company. I'm sure you all are all familiar with utilities. You use electricity. We're currently using Wi Fi here to be able to be on this Teams meeting. And it's really critical to have all of those utilities set up so that you can live your daily lives. So, Utility Concierge actually works with people through their moving process, whether they're a new home buyer or just somewhere in the process of moving new homes. We partner with them in setting up every home utility that they need before they move into their new space. So, just one less thing that they have to worry about, stress about when they move. So I know moving can be so stressful. I used this service actually a few years ago when I was moving into my new townhouse, and it was a game changer. I didn't have to worry about, meeting or being on the phone with an internet provider for 3 hours. I just had my concierge handle it all, and it's totally free service for people to use. And so our team is really that one stop shop to make moving stress free.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I moved. Gosh, it's been 4 years ago now. It's hard to keep track of time with the pandemic, and from Kentucky to Texas. And I know utilities were a lot different in Texas. I mean, there were many more opportunities to purchase utilities. I mean, in Kentucky, you had maybe two providers, and if you lived on the east side of town, this is who you used. But in Texas, I mean, there was pages and pages and websites of just trying to get utilities to my apartment. When I moved, much less then try to find Wi-Fi and all that sort of thing, and try to find a good deal on Wi-Fi, and which Wi-Fi company supports your complex. All those kinds of questions were really it was a bit frustrating. So that's an awesome service, right?
Yeah, definitely. Just one less thing to be frustrated about during the move. And um, so we are a sales-based organization, and so we have several different opportunities for students to start their careers with us. We have our sales internship that's happening actually over the summer, starting June 13th. It's a 7-week program and it ends July 29th. And the cool thing about our internship program is it's a really realistic picture of what it looks like, feels like to be a full-time utility concierge employee. So you're going to be talking and getting to know and working with real clients and customers of our business and making sales. So we do a 2-week training program that gives you everything that you need to be successful and set you up for success in your internship. So definitely a cool opportunity. We will have our 2023 opportunities available coming up this August. So definitely be on the lookout for those.
Excellent. And I know students at this point probably don't need the reminder, but we like to remind them that all of these opportunities are posted and available in Handshake. Easy to find. We also label our Edge partners in Handshake. So if you do a search for Edge, those opportunities will pop up as well. Love um, the transition, the transition graph here, and the opportunity for for growth and understanding the structure. I think is really important. And you said a 2-week training program. Obviously, I mean that's something else I get excited about, and I know students are interested in. Knowing they're going to be prepared for success. When they get into the role and they start the position. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I like to say, and this is just really a little bit more about the sales internship, and the next slide goes into our entry level roles. But if you want to go back one slide, I can walk them through just a little bit. I'm a visual person, so this is helpful to me. So one of the things that I say, when you're looking for a job, what you should be mindful of is what are the career and growth trajectories for you there.
Mhm.
And this is why we have this laid out this way, is for you to see that and be able to, really think about, oh, okay, do I see myself as a senior sales expert down the road? Maybe I could be a senior concierge, or maybe I perfect my sales pitch and I love it, but I really want to work on my leadership capabilities and skills. And so we have tracks for that as well, where you could grow and be a team captain, eventually, maybe a manager or a director as well. So, definitely something to always keep in mind and ask your recruiter, when you're meeting a company for the first time. What are the trajectories for growth for me as an intern or as an entry level candidate?
Yeah, that's a great point to address that really early on. I know a lot of times students are advised, when they're asking those questions in the interview process, one of the very common questions that you hear is, you know, room for growth and growth opportunities, training opportunities, that sort of thing. So, yeah, fantastic that is addressed. The earlier, the better. The earlier you understand that in the search process, the better, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And, this just goes into a little bit about the sales and leadership development program for our seniors. You essentially get to head straight into that trajectory for growth. So you'll start out in the training program, you'll go through our rookie program, and each step of the way, you will be mentored and trained by the best of the best, really giving you that stair step ladder towards the goal that you have in mind for yourself, either that senior sales expert or a leader, team captain, manager down the road.
Yeah, mentoring and supervision again, huge work, huge keywords for us and keywords for students. I know in their job search, and we talk all the time with employers about that piece is what differentiates an internship or a growth type program from a volunteer opportunity or a part-time or temporary job. So it's outstanding to see that that sort of focus.
Awesome. Yeah, and just a few things that I love about utility concierge and when I first started at the company, I always like to ask my colleagues and just pick the brains of everybody around me of why did you choose this company? Or there's a thousand different opportunities you could have taken. Why did you choose this one? And time again, I think the number one answer is the people and the culture. We're huge on just a positive culture and a warm, welcoming approach to everything that we do in the business, as well as some of the things here on the screen. Competitive pay and benefits are always necessary, good things to have that enable you to, um, not only pay your bills, but also fund those things that you're passionate about, the hobbies, the travel that you like to do if you want to see family or just go for a nice trip. So, the culture, the pay, we have some opportunities for remote work flexibility. I know for me, I love the variety in my schedule. I have worked in an office full time, and I've also worked remote full time, and I'm just here for the variety. I like a little bit of both. I like to be on campus, and I just like the flexibility that comes with it. So that's definitely great as an opportunity, as well as our casual approach to dress code and our training as well. So just some things to keep in mind as well as you're searching what, remember to think about the things that are important to you. That way you can be prepared with those questions when you approach an employer for an interview or even at a job or a career fair.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know we're going to talk a little more about kind of clarifying values, and we get a bit further into the topic. But I mean, that's a great illustration here of those things that students should be weighing, when they're undertaking the job search or making decisions about which offers to accept. I saw on LinkedIn recently that I think, just recently, remote interest in remote positions or applications for remote positions surpassed traditional in-person opportunities, which I think is really important for folks to understand. For us as a career center to understand, employers who are staffing to understand that it is a popular format, right? So that it's great to see. Let's see. Let me make sure. Oh yeah, we want the contact information for sure, right?
Yeah,
Contact. So go ahead, please.
no, I was going to say definitely feel free to write this down. We could even probably drop it in the chat if we want to as well, if anybody's interested. But I am always available via email. Would love to set up time to chat, even if it's about 10 minutes, a question that you have, or if you're trying to decide if sales is a good option for you or whatever it is as you're trying to figure out your career for the first time. um, I am happy to be a resource for that. So definitely jot that down.
Excellent. Yes, I put it in the chat, and I'm glad to see on screen. I always like to put two R's. I know I'm probably not the only one. I like to put two R's in your last name. Sorry about that. We haven't
It's
done that once
common.
already. Is it well, when you say Powers in Texas, it's not a common name, so I hear all sorts of things, especially with my accent. All right, back to our topic, and like I said, I wanted to revisit this graphic because I think this is so important, and I don't think we talk enough about uh, how your job search and your job selection should originate, and where it should originate, and what students should be considering before they go down that path. And obviously, internships. I'm biased. We're here to talk about internships, but internships go a long way in helping you clarify some of these sorts of things. They're a great way to test drive a potential career or occupation before you get into it. I know students who've engaged in an internship early on and decided to change their major. I mean, that's not unheard of or infrequent. I think students are sometimes surprised and terrified when that happens to them. But you want to know as early as you can, get as much information as early as you can about how to best make this decision. And this is a great illustration. Did you want to talk a bit about what we have going on here?
Yeah, for sure. And I like to first just start out by saying, searching for the perfect job is impossible. And, some people, good for them. They know exactly what they want to do for the rest of their life. Awesome. I think for the majority of us, myself included, it's more of a journey and it's a combination of different experiences that you get to have to get you to where you're going. But I think along the way, you learn so much and you don't have to know exactly what it is that you want to do for the rest of your life. So definitely don't be too overwhelmed when you're starting the job search. And one thing that I like to keep in mind as I approach opportunities and have in my past, and I tell students all the time, is you really want to think about how the job aligns to you. So I always think alignment. And the three categories that I think of are your core values, your knowledge and skill sets, and then your career interests. So at the top is core values, which to me is the most important. I don't know if any of you have ever done an exercise like a moral compass or another activity that's similar to that, but really thinking through and writing down what's important to you, what you don't want to compromise on, and what really drives you. And these things, it's so important to have those from the beginning, not that you can't shift if you take a job opportunity and find out later that it doesn't align to your core values, but it does help you to avoid some of those sticky situations if you do it on the front end to really do the work, find out your core values, and be able to use that through your employment process and your job search. So I would say number one, if you don't remember anything else, that is my number one, your core values. And it's helped me in my job search, and I know it will for my future as well.
Yeah, a great point there. Identifying your core values and then also being able to kind of prioritize those. Your a position might not meet all five or 10 or eight or however many you have listed, but top three. I mean, what is most in clarifying what is most important to you in those core values, I think is really important. I mean, and when we talk about core values, we're talking about weighing things about flexibility and time with family, family orientation versus finances, possibly money and funding, and again, just knowing enough about yourself to understand where you'll be most happy or most fulfilled.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, and sometimes those shift. Some of those priorities might shift. So when you're in college, maybe your top priority is finances and, work-life balance or time with family isn't as important. But, as the years go, maybe it shifts a little, vice versa, whatever. It's always good to have that regular check-in with yourself as you're evaluating your current role and maybe opportunities for the future.
Yeah, a great point. My values, what's important to me, not the same as they were at 22, for sure. If I can remember 22, and even changing your location, they can shift a bit. As your parents age, they can shift a bit. Where you want to work, how close you want to be to family. When you start your own family, they're going to shift a bit. So yeah, it's understanding those and being flexible are really key in the job search and just understanding your career direction uh, in general. We talked a bit about career interests and how internships are a great way to better understand those, whether it be a project-based internship, an in-person internship. Your courses, obviously, classes can help you as well there. I think conversations like this or informational interviews that you might conduct with someone in the field are great for helping clarify career interests. Any thoughts about how to develop those other two sets, say either career interest or knowledge and skills?
Yeah. So for career interests, like I was talking about in that previous slide, a good approach to have when you're going to talk to an employer for the first time is to ask, if I'm interested in this sales internship, what are the opportunities for me to grow? Do I need to stay in sales for the rest of my career? Do you have cross functional projects where I could learn a little bit more? Maybe I have a passion for marketing or I want to explore that. Maybe I want to try out business development. You know, ask questions like, um, what does a typical career path look like for a person in the sales concierge seat? Or how many people change jobs within the company over the course of a year? Those are some questions that can give you some pretty good insight into the career paths. And then also, once you have that information, then it's up to you to decide, okay, does this align with where my career interests are? And does that sound like something that, oh, I could see myself doing that? Or, oh, no, that is not where I want my career going. Um, and just asking questions like that can help clarify um, those things for you. So definitely ask, and recruiters are the best people to ask. If you get to an interview with a hiring manager, definitely ask them about their personal career growth and journey too, because asking specifically about their personal journey can give you really good insight as
Mhm.
well. So that
Yeah.
would be super helpful. And then I think as far as, knowledge and skill sets go, my point here in putting this is really to understand what you bring to the table.
Mm.
More often than I would like to, I've had students come up and they say, well, I'm interested in sales, have any sales experience. And I would just challenge that and say, I'm interested in sales. I've had internships where I've worked really closely with customer service and I've had to market myself and my business to grow it in XYZ categories and really help the recruiter draw the connection of what skill sets you do have and what knowledge you do have, instead of coming with a deficit to the recruiter, because I bet everybody has an experience that they can draw from, that they have skills and they have knowledge that they've built. So definitely know yourself, do some, I would say, mock interviews are always good. Go to your friends and family too and ask them for advice. Because sometimes you can't see it, but the people closest to you can. And also on your resume, that shines through too. So always review your resume, yourself, edit it 5, 6 times before you start applying, but also have people look at it that really know you, because you never know what kind of insight they have to share.
Yeah, yeah, that's great stuff, and we're starting to kind of work over into the more technical parts, I guess, of you could call it, of the job search. I love this existential, who am I and why am I here? Part of the whole career search. We'll move into some more nitty gritty kinds of things, though, that I know that students, and like I said, more practicalized, technical sorts of things. Like there's so much to discuss, right? We've already touched on. The resume, I think we've already kind of talked about interviewing a bit, and we'll dig into those a little more. But even something as basic, sometimes students have questions about the search process, online platforms, application practices. I know it's frustrating, and we've all been there because we all job search. We spend a lot of time evaluating, changing, adapting, adjusting our resume, and putting all that information on there. And then we fill out an online application that wants feels like it wants blood and hair samples. I mean, it's just a lot. It's a lot of stuff. Um, any insight onto those online platforms or application platforms in terms of best practices? I know we're huge fans, obviously, of Handshake here, but I mean, other job. It's important for students to know about and to utilize other job search platforms too. So I know you probably have some insight about other platforms that might be popular, or some advice about applying. Let's just talk about applying. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I can say, coming from personal experience, whether it was in college or after, it is a daunting process and something that would make it easier. I think a lot of people have that one template resume that they just bulk upload everywhere, which is
Right.
great if it's general. However, I've definitely, received applications for a sales role or a marketing role, and in their description it says, I'm currently a sophomore and I'm looking for a business analytics internship. I'm like, that's awesome, but that's not, and maybe you are open to a sales or marketing role, but in your first line of your resume, you just told me you weren't. So I would say if you are open to various opportunities, have a few different resumes that tailor to those audiences so that you're not just using one and bulk uploading it as well. So
Mhm.
and if you are just using one, be sure to change out those words so that you're not just, your application isn't looked at or isn't screened in the same way because you've, just knocked yourself out of the running with that first line in your resume.
Yeah, keywords and scanning. I've not had a lot of opportunity personally with scanning type software that reviews resumes or applications. Have you had much experience with those, or would you have any tips in terms of, you know, working through those, putting your best foot forward, I guess you could say, with that kind of software?
Yeah, so I actually look at the resume. So I don't use any scanning software, and at all of my previous jobs, it was the same.
That's
We
okay. It's
there
interesting here.
there was a person behind the screening. I will say one of the things that can cause students to slip up in their application is a lot of times there are a few questions at the beginning of the application that says, are you currently pursuing a bachelor's degree? What's your GPA? And if you answer those or don't answer those, if you answer them incorrectly or you forget to answer them, that can knock you out really fast, because those are usually requirements on a job opportunity. So, as a recruiter, if you don't meet the requirements, you can't be moved forward. And so, I would say definitely pay attention to those questions, even as nitty gritty as they can be. They do set your application apart.
What are your thoughts regarding, tied to the application? I mean, once you've applied, you've not interviewed. Yeah, I think that's well, they can all be high anxiety periods, right? After you've applied, you're waiting. After you've interviewed, you're waiting. So, but in terms of just following up after the application or interview, I know everyone has a little different take on what's appropriate. I've talked to recruiters who've said, reach out to me on LinkedIn, want to stay in touch. Students obviously want to stand out in some way or follow up. Everyone wants to know what's going on in the search. I'm hearing a lot of uh, ghosting happening on everyone's part. Students ghosting, employers ghosting, and not letting candidates know what's up. But so in terms of following up and keeping some kind of line of communication open, is that appropriate? How would you suggest students go about it? What are your thoughts?
I would say if a recruiter gives you their information, you have an open line to them. So obviously use it responsibly. Don't hit them up, twice a day. But if you haven't heard back from them, it's been a week, definitely give them a call, or if it's a business phone, you could even text them, send them an email. And I think that is very appropriate. I know personally when I give somebody, a student, my information, I am saying that, I'm meaning it when I say, please reach out if you need anything. Because a lot of times recruiters aren't getting back to you because not because they have the answers and they're just holding it from you. It's usually a holdup somewhere else down the line.
Mhm.
Maybe they haven't heard back from a hiring manager. Maybe a hiring manager is out on vacation for a week, out of the office unexpectedly from, COVID. And so you have to remember that there are lots of different steps in the process, and it's always good to reach out, and hopefully your recruiter can be open and honest with you. But definitely use it if you haven't heard from them and you have that information. um, I would say if you don't have their information and you've applied, I would hold off on reaching out a ton of times. um, Again, There's usually a reason why. Maybe there's a hold on the position.
Mhm.
Maybe the position is almost be filled. So they'll communicate with you as soon as they're able to. And then if you can find a recruiter and follow them on LinkedIn, I think that's a great way to connect informally as well. Now, you again don't hound them with messages, but it's helpful to even, build that rapport, build a connection with them um, on a social platform like LinkedIn, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful to understand, and that insight is really valuable to students. I think a lot of times, having not been on the inside and seeing that hiring process and all the different things that can pause it, for a million different reasons, right? Someone sitting on someone's desk and it needs to take the next step and it just hasn't moved yet. In higher ed, we're notoriously slow. I mean, the search can take months, 2 or 3 months. Um, and it can be a long wait. So that's a really good heads up. And something else we talk about, or kind of related to the applying piece, is frustration, especially with our international student population. It's the search in general is more challenging. I've spoken with students who've applied, strong students who have strong materials who've applied 200 positions. So and it's just a matter of finding the right opportunity. But everyone on some level goes through that, whether you're applying for 20 positions or 200. Fighting that apathy and that frustration can be tough. Any tips or thoughts about just trying to stick with it, or just general considerations about that search and that process?
Yeah, I would say specifically for international students, um, it's not you. Usually it's the company's laws or bylaws and
Right.
regulations that prevent them from being able to move forward with an application because they might not be able to offer sponsorship or whatever the holdup is. I would say, instead of blindly, applying to a ton of different things, I would focus on research and your career centers who might know employers that do work with international students. Talk to your peers that are ahead of you. Ask, what companies they've had success with. And I think if you go at it from that approach, you won't find as much, apathy and just getting worn down from rejections because
Mm-hmm.
you've got to know it's not you. It's
Right.
not rejecting you. It's a lot of times the companies just won't allow it. So don't be too hard on yourself and definitely do research on the front end to prevent some of that.
So happy to hear you share that and say that. So often I say to students, it feels personal, but it's not personal. It's not a personal thing. It's not you. It is your material, so it's hard to separate yourself from it sometimes. It's you on paper, or you feel like it is, uh, but it isn't. It's not. It's not a personal thing. And if you get frustrated and apathetic and slow down on the applications, then you're less likely to find that position. We sometimes I even talk about applying as a numbers game. I mean, at some point you have to find the right fit. You have to get to yes. So you continue to apply and push at it until you get to yes. But it is. I know especially for international students, it can be really challenging. Like I said, I know a million topics we could talk about. We probably should have broken these up into several segments now that I'm thinking about it. But let's talk about interviewing, and just some best practices around interviewing. I mean, I think I should say at this point feel like it's a given that students understand general best practices for interviewing and what they ought to be doing. But I don't think we should. I don't think we should make those kinds of assumptions. I think this format has changed things a bit. I think folks get a bit rusty with their social skills and in-person confidence and dress from full body dress, right? A lot of times we're now with the online stuff, we're used to dressing from the waist up, more or less, so to speak. But any considerations about what you've seen in interviews maybe some do's and don'ts and some things that really stick out to you.
Yeah, I would say again, make sure you talk to your recruiter before an interview. They're your best resource. They're here for you to be your support throughout the whole process. And I like to have a conversation with my candidates like the morning before their interview just to answer any questions, see how they're feeling, do a pulse check with them. And I think that that one helps, calm down the nerves. And then two, any last minute questions that you have. I think a lot of times, even a week prior, you don't have questions yet, but as you get closer, you start thinking of a million different things. And so I think it's good to have something set up with your recruiter and just know that they're your resource. They're there for you to help you throughout that process. We all know that in the virtual environment, we want to keep a clean background like this. I have unfortunately had stories where I've gotten on for a virtual career fair and a student just has like dirty laundry, a messy bed, and it's like, oh, that's probably not the way you want to start your start your first interaction with an employer. All that said, as we move more towards in person again, the same goes true with the way you hold yourself when you walk into a room. You look somebody in the eye, give them a handshake, a big smile. Your energy and the way you hold yourself is going to be the first impression with your hiring team. So if you have questions about that or if you're feeling nervous, that's okay. That's totally normal. But do some practice rounds with your friends, your colleagues. I'm sure a professor would help you out, even the recruiter. So definitely do some practice rounds, get those nerves out of the way so that you are feeling your confident self and do whatever, what makes you feel the most confident. Do that right before the interview because when you are your most confident self, you're going to be the best, you're going to perform the best, and you're going to answer the questions in an authentic way.
It's a great way to. Energy is the perfect word to use to describe it. What's your overall, and that's a popular word I know now. What kind of vibe? What's the vibe like, right? What are you putting out there? That's a fantastic point. And again, to reinforce some other things you said, practice, 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 practice. It's uncomfortable, folks. We're not interviewed every day. We don't enjoy it. A lot of times we don't like to talk about ourselves, but it's something you have to do, right? Something that you have to become accustomed to and think about. Another great practice for interviewing, and that is also painful, is to record it and watch yourself respond to questions and watch your body language and that sort of thing. That is a great teacher, and it is, like I said, it can be a bit it's hard to watch. I don't like to hear or see myself on camera, so I understand, but it will teach you a lot about what you need to do, not do, especially if you're interviewing in this media, in this type of format, right? Great point about your background, that sort of thing. I think classes have been online, at a lot of institutions, and maybe what professors will accept when you show up for class is not what an employer expects, right? So clean some of those kinds of things up. Be aware of your background. Be aware of your sound. Be aware of your lighting. All those things are not just important for TikTok. they're important for the interview as well. Lighting and angles. Everybody should know about lighting and angles now with social media. Let's see. I'm looking through some other questions here. We've addressed most of the big things I wanted to talk about. Of course, I do have some burning questions before we wrap up to get to know you a little more. But are there any other notes or suggestions about the search process in general that you'd like to share that we haven't hit? I know a lot of times what not to do is as important as what to do. And I always enjoy hearing horror stories. So if you have any of those, that might be entertaining also. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on the big things. And I think the one thing I just keep saying is, try not to get overwhelmed, take it bit by bit, and reach out for help. Ask people. There are so many amazing resources, whether it be the university, the employer themselves, your immediate circle. And so use it, do the practice interviews so you don't become the horror story that some recruiter tells about you on a presentation. So,
Right.
uh,
I'm trying to get one. You leave the names out. We can leave out names.
yeah,
But
no, you don't want to do that. And I will say this, another thing that you might not think about, but employers get here all the time is your voicemail. So make sure that you have
hmm,
your voicemail set up with
hmm.
something appropriate that you wouldn't mind an employer listen to. So I think students sometimes forget that, especially early on, maybe freshman, sophomore year. Make sure it's clear, your name is there, um, and it is something that is pleasing, and you would not be embarrassed if an employer called to leave you a voicemail about an interview. So that is my extra tip.
That was great. The voicemail is great, and that made me think of emails also. You don't see this as often as you used to. I'm sure most students are using university accounts, but you'd get some weird Gmail names and addresses. You make sure that you keep that professional. Something else that seems like a really small thing, but I know that I appreciate is when I'm storing resumes or receiving resumes, don't name your file resume. If an employer has a folder full of resumes and they're all called resumes, they don't know who it belongs to. As a courtesy to them and to understand their process a bit better, I mean, include your name. They need to see your name anyway, your name, the position for which you applied, and maybe even date that resume. That is also helpful for you when you're filing those multiple versions of your resume that Lizzie mentioned earlier. You should have different resume formats for different types of roles. That will help you be a little better organized, and you won't be opening 15 files that all say resume, wondering which one was the marketing resume, right? So a little thing, but that can also be very helpful. All right, my favorite part, the five burning questions before we wrap things up. What was your first job or dream job?
Yeah, great question. Well, I did some nannying jobs, I guess, through middle school and high school, but my first real job, I was a camp counselor and art director at a summer camp, which was super fun. I had lots of stories about the kids, and it was an overnight camp, so
Oh
lots of
wow,
fun there. Learned a
yeah,
lot. Um, would totally do it again.
awesome. Who or what's been most influential in your career development?
I would say my bosses. I have been super fortunate to have amazing bosses. That's another thing to look for when you're considering job opportunities. You spend a lot of time with your colleagues and your managers. So make sure you're picking good ones. And thankfully, I have had awesome ones.
Yeah, we talk a lot about networking. You know, those bosses obviously are part of that network. So are role models and mentors. Do you have any role models or mentors, and how did they impact you?
I would also say all of my bosses were very brilliant female leaders in the workplace. And I learned a lot about them in just how they conducted themselves, how they conducted business, and always brought their ideas to the table no matter what room they were sitting in. And I was inspired by all of them. So they were definitely and still are motivating to me.
That's awesome. What would you say? Everyone thinks. I mean, a lot of times students think that they see professionals and they seem so polished and they're perfect. You know, and you just sometimes people can come across as perfect, never made a mistake. But what would you say was your greatest failure, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, so for this question, I was trying to think like, what is my greatest failure? And
Yes.
I'm like, what makes it great? I don't know. I
Right. It,
I
it, it could be, should be, maybe, right? That's when we
right.
learn most. Right.
Exactly. And I think as I was thinking about it, I fail every day in some way. And we have a saying, it's like fail often and fail fast. I don't think it's about
There you go.
how many times you fail. It's like, what are you learning from it and how do you
Right.
pick yourself back up? Because, I love to learn and I love to dive into new situations, but with new situations comes failure. And so just becoming familiar with that and not letting it like get you down, but having it motivate you to push forward, I think is really important.
Yeah, that's a great point. The faster you fail, the faster you succeed, without a doubt. You don't get success without failing. We all do. Last question: what's the best piece of advice you've received?
I think this goes back to your core values. Somebody told me, there's always going to be another job. Don't compromise your core values for something in business just because it will get you to where you want to be. There's always another job and there's always another opportunity. So follow and stay true to what your core values are, and you will be just fine.
Thank you. Great advice, especially in relation to the search, and in that search process. Thank you again for spending time this afternoon. I know you've had a busy day. We were talking about that earlier. I appreciate you bringing the energy. I want to remind students to be certain that you're looking for utility concierge opportunities on Handshake. We are proud and excited to have them as a Mavs Edge partner. Lizzie's been at several events. You'll see her on campus and around campus often. Are there any other announcements or anything coming up that you'd like to share before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. Just thanks again for
Covered.
having us. Thanks again for all the time and support you're pouring into the students. So it is great to partner together.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Our next session is going to be Thursday, April 21st. And we're going to be talking about a little bit about personal finance for young professionals. Fidelity Investments is going to join us. Contact information, website, Utility Concierge website are all available in the comments. And you'll notice there that Lizzie is welcome you to reach out to her. So that's fantastic. Thank you again for your time.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.